Shalom Uvracha. Parashat Shoftim ends with a surprising episode. The end of Parashat Shoftim speaks about Eglah Arufah. It's an incident where there's a case of murder. We find the victim, the body, but we don't find the killer. We don't find the murderer. And we need a special ceremony that will atone for this mishap, for this tragic case in which we find the victim and not the killer. The question is, what is this doing in Parashat Shoftim? Parashat Shoftim speaks about the order of governance within the Jewish people. Speaks about the king, speaks about the Beis Din HaGadol, meaning the judicial authority, speaks about the Kohanim and the Leviim and the limitations on each of these branches of government and their powers. And the question is, why should Eglah Arufah be there? Moreover, right before Eglah Arufah, we speak about going to war. When you go to war, you have to be brave, you have to be strong, and those who are not need to go home, and so on, meaning the system of war, the way in which the Jewish people wages war, and also how do we lay siege onto it upon a city. If you shall lay a siege on a city, how do you do that? Meaning these are questions of power, questions of national governance and power. How do you execute that? In the beginning of next week's parasha, Ki Tetzei, we carry on with war. If you go to war and you find an Eshes Yefas Toya, a woman that you take as part of the captives of war. Okay, so we're talking about war. But in the middle, you have Eglah Arufah. Why is that placed? Why is that inserted in between these passages that seem to be one continuum? But I think the answer is no, there's a break between Shoftim and Ki Tetzei. Shoftim indeed speaks about the ideas of governance, speaks about the Shoftim, the judges, about the king, about the Beis Din HaGadol, the higher authority of the judiciary. That's what Parashat Shoftim is all about. The end of Parashat Shoftim tells us what happens when it fails, when the judicial system on a local level, on a municipal level, when it fails, and it's a colossal failure. Because why is the judicial system here if not to prevent murder, which there's nothing more abominable to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than idolatry on the one hand and murder on the other? Nothing worse. And over here we find a victim of murder and we're not able to deal with it. The pasuk says, La'aret lo yuchupar, the land is not atoned for a case of murder, Kim b'dam shofchei, unless you catch the killer and you bring him to justice. And over here we fail, and it's a terrible, cataclysmic failure, and it needs a special ceremony. And that's how Shoftim ends. Ki Tetzei, that's something else. There we speak about what happens on a private level. If you find among the captivity, you find a woman and you want to bring her into your home, well, you're not allowed to. You first have to give her space. You have to respect her humanity. You have to allow her to mourn for 30 days over her family, and only then are you allowed to bring her into your home. Before that, you're not allowed to. That's a special private halacha, and that's Ki Tetzei. Ki Tetzei relates to halachas that relate to private individuals. It's no longer the systems of governance, but rather private issues that happen to people, which is of course part of the mishpatim. But that's not Shoftim. Parashat Shoftim speak about the systems themselves, the king, the judiciary, and their failure. Their failure at the end, where you need a special ceremony of atonement for this failure of the system. It's a system failure. And Parashat Shoftim is very important for our day and age because it teaches us that it's not just about the individuals and the families and the communities, but it's about the nation. Parashat Shoftim teaches us that we have a national belonging and that we walk together as one nation under one king and under one judiciary. There's one halachic body that decides halacha for all of the Jewish people. And if there's an elder that teaches halacha against, in contradiction with the higher authority, then he has to be, it's punishable by death. There's no room for him among the Jewish people because the Jewish people walks together with one halacha. Yes, over Galus, over a long exile, we've dispersed and we've developed many different customs and different versions of halacha that are slightly different in details here and details there. But we have to remember that the general thrust is that we have one halacha for one nation. with one king and one kahuna, one priesthood, and that is Shoftim. And today that we're gathered into our own land, we need to strengthen that appreciation. Of course, we appreciate our individuality, our families, and our communities, no question. But we need to have a strong consciousness, a strong awareness of being one nation that serves Hashem together, that strides forwards to our national destiny together. We have to be united in that mission, notwithstanding our differences, notwithstanding differences of opinion. We must be able to reach those compromises, those arrangements that bring us together to be able to be unified going forward. And of course, I'm speaking about right now the ongoing conflict, the ongoing strife within the Jewish people, between the sectors, between the Haredim and the non-Haredim in terms of draft, between the right and the left, and so on. We must be able to stride forwards together to reach our national destiny, because if we're not able to do so, we won't get there. We don't have the ability to function. We don't have the ability to exist here upon our land without Parashat Shoftim, without the general governance that binds us, that brings us together under one leadership, under Hashem, under God. Halavai, a deep wish that we should be able to do this, to achieve this unity of striding together towards our national destiny, which we shall achieve if only we'll be able to put our act together and reach those arrangements and those compromises that will bind us as a nation together. We should all have a beautiful Shabbos.